Now let's talk about lines of reasoning, which is another thing that came up in that rubric a lot, right? You had to, well, I forget what was the exact wording. Present your evidence in a coherent line of reasoning or something like that. Provides specific evidence to support all claims in a line of reasoning and consistently explains how the evidence supports a line of reasoning. So, what does that mean? What's a line of reasoning? Essentially, the idea is just that you kind of want to order your thoughts in a logical way. That kind of creates a line of reasoning for the reader, right? A pathway through your argument, through your reasoning for the reader to go through. So your line of reasoning is essentially the way that you organize and present all of the components of your essay, your claims, your evidence, your commentary, etc. You should order your thoughts so that the reader is guided through your argument step by step in a way that is logical and coherent. Well, what does it mean logical and coherent? How can I make sure I am ordering things in a logical and coherent manner? Well, here are some tips. Each body paragraph should focus on only one claim. We don't want to have multiple claims in a body paragraph. If we allow each body paragraph to focus on its own claim, and that's how we choose to separate our body paragraphs, we make sure that we are organizing our thoughts in a way that makes sense, right? This body paragraph is going to focus on this claim and all of the evidence and commentary related to that. This one, this claim, and the evidence and commentary related to it, and so on. When you introduce evidence, make sure you adequately explain how it supports the claim through commentary before introducing the next piece of evidence. So the order should be this, right? Claim, evidence, commentary, evidence, commentary, evidence, commentary, right? You always want to explain the evidence and explain how the evidence supports the claim before you move on to the next piece of evidence. Before you end a body paragraph, make sure you have included commentary about how the claim supports the thesis, right? So that's the second type of commentary that we just talked about in our practice. I usually put that at the end of each body paragraph. Once I am done kind of presenting evidence that supports the claim and then explaining the evidence, right? And I've presented all of my evidence and my claim is really strong. Then at the end is usually when I put that commentary that takes the claim back to the thesis. That's not how it has to be done. It could be done earlier in the paragraph, but you need to make sure before you end the body paragraph that you have at some point included that commentary about how the claim supports the thesis. If your evidence deals with specific events in time, it's better to order them chronologically. This doesn't apply as much to the argument essay because usually if you're coming up with evidence from your own head, from your own knowledge and experiences, you're not going to have like specific points in time when these things happened. It's just maybe facts that you know or something like that. However, if you are using, if you're on the synthesis essay and you have sources, right, and one source is from the Civil War and another source is from World War II or something like that, you want to put them chronologically, right? Whatever happened first, you're going to present that evidence first. Whatever happened last, you're going to present that evidence last. It's not super common that this happens, but if you are dealing with specific events in time, specific time periods, put them in order. When writing your conclusion, you want to make sure that your conclusion brings all of your ideas together, but does not introduce any new claims or evidence. This is something we talked about in lesson 1. And those are the main points here of how to create a line of reasoning that is logical and coherent. You want to make sure you are essentially going step by step, right? You want to explain it step by step. You want to focus on one thing at a time. A lot of these are kind of intuitive as you're writing. You just want to make sure you're not all over the place with your writing, right? You don't want to be talking about one claim and then talking about another claim and then going back to the first claim and then, you don't want to be all over the place. You want to be like, all right, here's my introductory paragraph, here's the background information, here's my thesis. Now I'm going to focus on one claim in this body paragraph, I'm going to give all the evidence, and I'm going to explain the evidence before I move on to the next piece. Second paragraph, new claim, etc., etc. Keep it nice, keep it organized, make it make sense, explain everything before you move on to the next thing. So let's practice it. We are now going to write a full body paragraph. This might take you some time. Take as much time as you need. We are going to write a full body paragraph. We're going to kind of put together all of the things we've talked about, because we have all of the components now to do this, right? We know how to write claims, we know how to write evidence, we know how to write commentary, and we know what order to put the claims and the evidence and the commentary in. So let's do it. Let's put it all together. Here's a thesis and a claim that you're going to write a body paragraph for. The thesis is that it is in the best interest of the school, the student athletes, and the community for public high schools to take on corporate sponsors for their sports teams. This is our main argument, our main thesis of our essay. Now, I've given you the claim here. So actually, you're given essentially the first sentence of your body paragraph. If you want to just copy this word for word, you can switch it up a little bit, but focus on this claim. The funding provided by corporate sponsorships is beneficial for the student athletes that make up the school's sports teams. Go ahead, construct a body paragraph here. There's no specific number of evidence, of pieces of evidence that you should have, but you should have enough evidence to sufficiently support this claim, and you should have enough commentary to sufficiently link the evidence to the claim and link the claim to the thesis. Go ahead and pause the video now. Take as much time as you need. Give this your best shot. Try to write a full body paragraph for this claim and thesis. And when you're done, unpause it, and we'll look at my example. Okay, I think I just have it. Yeah, I have it on the next slide here. Obviously, your body paragraph could be pretty drastically different from mine, and that's okay, right? I want to make that clear here. You do not have to have the same types of evidence that I do. You do not have to have, the same exact commentary that I have. But here are the things you want to make sure you did. You want to make sure that your body paragraph contains the claim and kind of clearly states the claim. You want to make sure that your body paragraph has sufficient evidence to support the claim. You want to make sure your body paragraph has sufficient commentary that explains how the evidence supports the claim and how the claim supports the thesis. And you want to make sure your body paragraph presents these ideas in a logical manner that represents a coherent line of reasoning, following these tips we kind of talked about earlier. If you've done all those things, you should be good. If it meets all those requirements, you probably have a really strong body paragraph. So let's look at my example. Here's what I wrote. The funding provided by corporate sponsorships is beneficial for the student athletes that make up the school's sports teams. So that's the claim right there. We're starting off with our claim. The additional income can be used for equipment, uniforms, and other necessities that student athletes need to succeed in their sport. That's evidence, right? The additional income can be used for equipment, uniforms, and other necessities. That is evidence supporting this idea that the funding is beneficial for the student athletes. Now I'm going to explain why the funding, or why this is evidence for that claim. New uniforms can boost students' comfort and confidence on the field, while new equipment can ensure that they always have what they need to practice, improve, and play their best. So I've taken the evidence, right? The evidence is about how additional income can be used for equipment, uniforms, and other necessities. And now I've explained with my commentary why that supports the claim. The claim is that the funding is beneficial for the student athletes. My evidence is that it can be used for equipment, uniforms, and other necessities. My commentary is that the uniforms can boost students' comfort and confidence, and new equipment can ensure they always have what they need to practice, improve, and play their best. I've now explained why having this equipment, uniforms, and necessities are beneficial for the student athletes. And now I believe I go into my second piece of evidence here. In some schools, student athletes need to fundraise in order to pay for their team's equipment, but corporate sponsorships can benefit students by eliminating that necessity. Okay, so here's my second piece of evidence. My second piece of evidence is that corporate sponsorships can benefit students by eliminating the necessity to fundraise. Now I have to do commentary that explains that, or explains how it supports my claim. If a school were to receive external funding for its athletics, students would no longer need to worry about fundraising and could instead spend that time practicing, studying or practicing. Now, I've kind of almost combined my evidence and commentary in this one. I have a little bit of commentary and a little bit of evidence in each of these, if that makes sense, right? I kind of already alluded to, in the evidence itself, I kind of already alluded to the fact that it can benefit students, right? So I already have that part down. The rest of my commentary just needs to explain why that's the case or explain how that supports the claim. Couldn't think of the word for a second there. And then in my last sentence, I provide that final piece of commentary that connects my claim back to my thesis, right? My thesis is that it is in the best interest of the school, the student athletes, and the community for public high schools to take on corporate sponsors for their sports teams. The benefits provided to students by corporate sponsorships would be both mental and tangible, and it would therefore be in the best interest of the student athletes for schools to take on corporate sponsors. So yeah, it goes back, talks about how corporate sponsors are in their best interest of the student athletes. I'm connecting my claim about it being beneficial back to my thesis about how it is in their best interest for them to take on corporate sponsors. Again, yours doesn't have to look exactly like this, but hopefully you can go through the body paragraph you wrote and see the same sorts of things that I see in mine here, right? You can be like, all right, I have a claim, that's good. I have evidence, that's good. I have commentary that sufficiently explains how the evidence supports the claim, etc. If you can do what I just did with my body paragraph to your body paragraph, then you have a good body paragraph. Let's do another practice here. Again, we're going to write a body paragraph, but this time you have to come up with your own claim. The thesis here is the same. The thesis is, it is in the best interest of the school, the student athletes, and the community for public high schools to take on corporate sponsors for their sports teams. Now, write a body paragraph with your own claim. I would recommend doing something that is different from the previous one, right? So the previous one talks about how the funding is beneficial for the student athletes. Maybe focus on something else. Either focus on how something other than the funding is beneficial for them, or maybe focus on something about how it's beneficial for the school or how it's beneficial for the community rather than the student athletes. Try to do something a little bit different here that supports this thesis rather than using another claim that's very similar. So go ahead. I will leave this on the screen here. Pause the video, take as much time as you need. When you're done, unpause it, and you can compare what you wrote to what I wrote. Okay, I realized I actually didn't write anything for this, but I don't know why I didn't. That's okay, though, because you can still compare yours to my first example here. Your claim is going to be different, but all of the components are the same component. Every single body paragraph you write has the same components. So go ahead and check for those same things. Do you have a claim? Do you have evidence that supports the claim? Do you have commentary that explains how the evidence supports the claim? Have you done it in a coherent line of reasoning order, right? Where you explain the evidence before you move on to the next piece of evidence? Do you have commentary that connects the claim to the thesis? If you have all those things, you are probably good to go. A claim that I think would be good here, by the way, would be something about how maybe you could say that you could say something like corporate sponsors benefit the community by taking the burden of funding the school sports teams off of the community. That's maybe one claim you could come up with here. Another claim could be that corporate sponsors are beneficial for the school because they give them additional funding to make improvements that they wouldn't otherwise be able to make. That's a potential claim you could come up with, something like that. Those are the sorts of things that I think would be really strong claims here. Something that focuses on the school or the community, right? Because those are the other aspects of our thesis here that we haven't talked about yet. We already have a claim that relates to this, and in order for our essay to be a good essay, we need to support all components of our thesis, right? So our other body paragraph should focus on this and this. All right, so that's lines of reasoning, that's commentary. And I want to be clear that these concepts apply not just to the argument essay. I know we said we're mostly focusing on the argument essay. That is true. But these first ideas that we talked about aren't just for the argument essay. They are for all three essay types. All three essay types need commentary. All three essay types should have a logical, coherent line of reasoning. Now we're going to transition into something that is a little bit more specific to the argument essay. And that's building an argument. So what is the point of an argumentative essay? Any argumentative essay, not just this argumentative essay. Well, you want to be persuasive, right? You want to convince the reader that you're correct and that any opposing argument is not correct. You want the reader to read what you have to say and say, yeah, I like what this person has to say. I agree with them. They made a really good point. Or if you had a reader that has the opposing opinion, you want him to read this and be like, well, I hadn't thought about that before. He's actually right. I'm going to change my mind now. That's your goal when you are writing something that's intended to be argumentative. How do we do that? Well, on the macro level, on the larger level, it's the things we've already talked about, right? Strong claims, strong evidence, sufficient commentary, a good line of reasoning. All of the things we already talked about are going to make your argument strong. However, there are some other ways that we can increase the persuasiveness of our writing. Some specific things we can add in, some like spices and flavors we can add into our essay to make it more convincing, more persuasive. And those things that we will talk about for the rest of today's lesson are diction and syntax, rhetorical appeals, and opposing viewpoints. These are those extra things you can add in to make your essay more persuasive, more strong, and more sophisticated as well. Let's talk about diction and syntax first. What do these words mean? You may know what these words mean. If you have taken AP language, you probably know what these words mean. But let's kind of quickly go over them. Diction it's word choice. It's the words and phrases that a writer chooses in their writing. It's the words that they choose to use instead of other words, right? And syntax is the arrangement of those words and phrases. It's the way that sentences are structured, things like that. Now, why does this matter? Well, the words and phrases that you choose to use and the way that you choose to present those words and phrases can result in different connotations or interpretations, right? If you choose different words over words that may have the same literal meaning, it can create a different effect. And we'll talk about that with this example here. We have two sentences here. The cat ran away because it was scared of the dog, versus frightened to its core, the cat quickly fled to escape its mortal enemy, the dog. They both have the same literal meaning, right? They are both illustrating a scenario in which a cat is scared because there's a dog and the cat runs away. But they present this information in very different ways by using different word choices, right? Different diction, and by structuring the sentence in different ways, using different syntax. Which one better expresses the fear that the cat was feeling? They both have the same literal meaning, but which one better expresses the fear? Which one makes it seem like the cat really was scared? Probably the second one, right? Normally I would like to get some opinions here and hear some thoughts from students, but most of the time I think people would say that this second one better expresses the fear of the cat. Why? Well, let's look at some of the differences here. In the first example, it tells us that the cat was scared of the dog. In the second one, it tells us that the cat was frightened to its core. Frightened to its core is much stronger than scared, right? It creates a much more, it evokes a much more kind of powerful response than just scared. Frightened to its core really gives you that kind of imagery, that idea of like, wow, this cat is terrified, right? It's really, really scared. Whereas scared, just like, okay, it's scared, right? You don't think much about it. It's just scared. We have the same sort of idea with the cat ran away versus the cat quickly fled, right? Ran away, all right, it ran away. But if it quickly fled, that word quickly kind of, that adverb, right, adds something to fled. It implies that it, did it as quick as it could. And fled versus ran away. Fled conveys this idea that you're running away from danger, right? Whereas ran away, you could be running away for whatever reason. There are little differences, and they have the same literal meaning, but they make a whole lot of difference. They make a huge difference in the way that we read and understand and feel the sentence. And then for the syntax, we have some changes here as well. The second sentence starts off with frightened to its core. Right away, we set the mood, right? We tell the reader that whatever we're talking about, we don't even have the noun yet. We don't even know what the subject of this sentence is, but we know whatever it is, it's really, really scared if it's frightened to its core. Whereas the second sentence ends with it was scared, right? It tells us that the cat ran away first, and then it tells us that the reason that the cat ran away was because it was scared of the dog. We don't find out that it's scared until later on. That makes a difference as well. This same concept can be applied to persuasiveness as well. The words and phrases that you choose and the way that you choose to order or arrange those words and phrases can make your writing more or less persuasive. The same way that, in this example, the diction and the syntax made the author's writing more or less effective in conveying a certain emotion. So, what do we want to do to be persuasive? What diction and syntax do we want to use in order to be as persuasive as possible? We want to make sure we are using strong, direct, and specific words, and avoiding vague words. So words like good, bad, things, stuff, get, do, big, small, don't want to use words like that. Those words are vague, they're general, they don't really give us a good idea of what's going on, right? Instead of saying good, well, good can have a whole bunch of different meanings. Based on the specific circumstance, we can pick a way more specific word to demonstrate the idea that we want, or the feeling or whatever that we want to convey. If we said he was feeling good, well, how was he feeling? Was he feeling excited? That could be good, right? But it's more specific. Or was he feeling happy? That could be good, but again, more specific, right? Was he feeling energized? Was he previously feeling sick, but now he feels healthy again, right? Those are all way more specific words than just good. And the same thing can be applied to any of these, right? Instead of saying things or stuff, talk about what specific things or stuff you're talking about. Instead of saying, oh, he got something. Well, how did he get it? Did he grab it? Did he earn it? Did he achieve it? Did he buy it at the store? Was it a gift from someone, right? Get is so vague. There's definitely a more specific option you can use. And so on. I'll give you another example here. Lying is disingenuous is better than not telling the truth can be bad. Why? Lying is more direct than saying not telling the truth, right? It's more direct. And disingenuous is a more specific word than bad. You also want to choose words that unambiguously state your point and convey to the audience that your opinion is undoubtedly correct. You don't want to use words like maybe or sometimes or possibly. You want to convey, I am 100% right. There is no doubt that what I am saying is correct. That's what you want your audience to think about what you're saying. So strong words, direct words, specific words, nothing that leaves room for your audience to say, this guy might not know what he's talking about, or this guy doesn't seem so sure, or this guy's being really vague. And on the syntax side, you want to organize your thoughts in a clear, direct, and straightforward manner. You don't want to overcomplicate things. You don't want to, maybe organize things in a way that could lead to unintentional ambiguity, right? Where it's not certain, it's not clear what you're talking about. Straightforward, direct. This is my opinion. This is why I'm right. Here's my claim. Here's my evidence. Straightforward, to the point, strong, direct, specific, etc. Let me see if I have any other notes here I want to mention before I get to some practice. Okay, so an example for syntax. It's more persuasive to say, John F. Kennedy once declared, ask not what your country can do for you, ask for what you can do for your country. That, or is it better to say, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, is something that John F. Kennedy once said? No, the first one's better, right? It's more direct. It's telling us right away, all right, John F. Kennedy, he's saying this thing, and not saying, it's something that he once said. That's just, why would we do that? That's just a less direct, less straightforward way of conveying the idea.